All right, so for the next one, we want to talk about some terms, and we're going to go with some human development stuff, and then later, especially lab, we'll talk about some other stuff that comes with embryology and development. But here we're showing frogs, and only because that was the picture. But I just want to show you when they're talking about cleavage, they're really talking about going through mitosis very quickly. And here you can see we have these different terms, zygote, and they're not using the term morula. I'm not quite sure why, then blastula and gastrula. We'll talk about some of these terms and then becoming larval and then adult. So we want to really talk about kind of this side of it and what's happening really in humans for the most part for now. And then we'll talk about some of that other stuff later. So the human timetable. A zygote, that's a fertilized egg. You were a zygote for 24 hours. You know, I remember that was the best day of my life. So, yeah, so fertilization again takes place in the upper third of the oviduct. Day 2 through 5, you're going through cleavage, you're going through mitosis, and you're going to go to a 2-cell, 4-cell, 8-cell, 16-cell stage. And those stages are you are a solid ball of cells with nothing inside. And day 2 to day 5. Day 6, it starts to hollow out. That's when you get the blastula. And so now we're a hollow ball of cells. And if you look inside here, you have a blastocele. That is COEL means cavity. So this is the cavity inside the blastula. And then eventually you'll get this process, which I was going to talk about right now, but we'll just mention gastrulation, where you're actually having this folding in or pushing in of cells. And that will create another thing called an archikenteron, which is not here, and we'll talk about it later. But this would be the ancient gut. So this is actually where you're starting to get multiple layers. You know, we are triploblastic, which means we have 3 different layers. And so that's what that is. But anyway, so I want you to know this, and the blastula, again, day 14, that's typically when it would implant in a female. And when it implants, we call that a blastocyst. And we saw that term on the last video, CYST, blastocyst. And so for the first 2 weeks after fertilization, that fertilized egg is floating and turning into these other stages throughout the oviduct until it gets into the lining and attaches to the endometrium. All right, we are an amniotic egg, and that's very similar to other eggs like chicken eggs and reptile eggs. And so, you know, we don't have the shell. The shell is actually to kind of reduce water loss. And then we don't have necessarily all the other things like the albumin, which is the white of the egg. But we do have lots of the other stuff. And these are what we call extra embryonic membranes. And what we want you to know is they do have a purpose. So the chorion is for gas exchange. And the allantois also does gas exchange and waste disposal. And then you have the amnion, which is actually the fluid. Amniotic fluid is inside the amnion. And this is a mechanical barrier to make sure, you know, your mom's walking around and the belly's out there to make sure that kind of floating in this fluid to protect from any you know, things bouncing off mom's belly, I suppose, or mom runs into things like that. So it's to make sure there is no damage. And the amniotic fluid is when you hear a woman's water has broke, there is a plug, a mucus plug in the cervix, and it's basically when the kid's ready to come out, that plug is loosened and you get the expulsion of amniotic fluid. And then there's a yolk sac, and that is again a food source. And what you're seeing here in this picture is all of that stuff kind of is getting tied up into the umbilical cord. Okay, so those things kind of exist, and in a chicken, you know, a bird egg or a reptile egg, they may be a lot larger. But again, what's happening here is once these membranes kind of hook on together, then what happens is the waste is going into mom's bloodstream, and the nutrients are coming through along with immunity and other things like that. So, antibodies can get through. And so the one thing we need you to realize, and I'm not sure what you know, but the blood in mom does not go into the blood in baby and back. There is a barrier between those. And so things filter through in the umbilical cord, but the blood themselves never mix. All right, and just we hear the word embryo, and embryo and fetus, and sometimes they're used interchangeably, and they shouldn't be. They're really marked times in humans. An embryo is from week 2 to week 8, and then starting at the beginning of week 9 until birth, you're a fetus. And it really comes down to different things that are happening within this is where the organs and things start to develop, and you can already see eyes and fingers and toes and things like that. So. So those two terms are definitely different, and I want you to know that. And so we'll stop right there, and then, like I said, we will have a little bit more, maybe another recording. Haven't decided how I'm going to deal with that yet for the labs.